I knew I wanted to be an architect when I was 11 years old. So I started telling my family members. And one of my uncles actually said to me, "You know what? Do you really want to do that? They work really hard and they don't make much money. And besides, you're probably going to get married and have kids anyways, right?" I was mad. I was furious. And I think that pushed me even harder to pursue my dream. So 5 years of architecture school with its all-nighters and professors that made you cry during design critics. Graduation, 5 more years of internship and long hours with low pay. 9 exams, 1 failed, 1 retake, and licensure, but no fanfare. 21 years of working in the profession, 10 projects, some awards, 1 patent, 1 husband, 1 jumbo mortgage. 2 kids later, I was ready to quit architecture. So how did I go from passionately wanting to be an architect at the age of 11 to desperately trying to run away? That is not just my story. It's the story of my profession. 51% of the US population is made up of women. And in architecture programs, by the time we graduate, 42% of that population is women. And then by the time you look at statistics from the American Institute of Architects, we see that only 18% of the women remain in architecture as licensed professionals. And even more startling is the fact that 12% become partners and principals in firms that are licensed. That is the crux of the problem. So how do we change that? That was part of the challenge that we had, but it's not just something that happens in architecture. So equity is not a problem just in architecture. A lot of you know that already by the conversations that have been happening with Sheryl Sandberg and with the Lean-In organization, as well as the He for She movement that's going on right now with the UN. So what is the issue with equity? And it's not just an issue about having the right numbers of people at the right places. It's about listening and asking the hard questions. Who is going to bring different ideas to the table? Who is not there, and asking them to join in. So equity by design is a call to action that we had constructed for architects, both men and women, to study the data about what is wrong in the profession and to do something about it. It was a call to action. And architecture is not just for architects, and it's not for the 2% of the population that currently hires architects either. Architecture is for everyone. And I think there is a common belief that there's architecture with the capital A, there's the iconic buildings that get recognized in awards, and the famous architects. But then there's also the architecture of everyday people, our homes, our offices where we work, our schools where we learn, libraries, civic centers where we gather and congregate as communities, and even shops and restaurants where we socialize and meet people for the first time. We channel that energy, and I think that there's a possibility to see the hope and be a larger community of people that actually talk about the architecture. Because when we don't talk about architecture, we end up with places like this. When I grew up in suburban New Jersey, and I didn't know much about architecture at all. So my experience came from my day-to-day interactions, and I knew architecture as malls, basically. Well, all that changed when I went to China one summer on a trip to visit my grandparents. My aunt took me and my brother, and we had a wonderful time. We went to the Great Wall, we went to the Forbidden City, we went to these little tiny alleyways called hutong, which was the old neighborhood fabric of Beijing. And what I learned from my grandfather was that this place was designed intentionally by people, and it was built with great effort and care, meant to last beyond a human's lifetime, generations, dynasties. It was meant to capture the record of a civilization. And from that experience, that's when I decided that I wanted to become an architect and go through that experience. And even though I got to that point of wanting to be an architect, back to the story of the disconnect. What made me decide that I wanted to run away? So in our research, we highlighted those, we call them pinch points, the factors that cause people to struggle and want to leave the field of architecture. There are 5 categories that we came up with as those pinch points. Hiring and retention was the first one, just getting out of school and dealing with the economy. If the economy was bad, you were likely not getting a job in architecture, and forever the doors would be closed on you as an opportunity. There's paying your dues, the time it takes from when you get hired to when you get licensed, which could be 10 to 12 years. And finally, the licensure process and that early stage, there's hoops to jump through. You have to complete your hours of service as an intern. You have to study for 9 exams. They keep changing the exams every 2 or 3 years, which makes it impossible to know what to expect. And then there's a time clock that ticks away. If you don't finish all 9 exams within a certain period, you have to take them all over again. And then there's caregiving. Life happens. It's not just about parenthood. It's about, as you get older, you might get sick, something might happen to you or your loved one. You might have to care for elderly parents. There's that hurdle. And finally, there's the glass ceiling, which we studied about implicit bias and the things that prevent us from promoting people of different backgrounds. So I was lucky in that I managed to navigate through the first 3 pinch points without too much challenge. But then the 4th pinch point was caregiving. That was my biggest hurdle. I was lucky in the fact that I got to work on some pretty amazing projects through my tenure. I worked on Pixar animation studios and the Apple retail stores. And towards the end of the work that I did on the retail stores, I became pregnant with my first child. And I was kind of in denial. I was thinking I could just push through and, was going to keep my career on track. I went to site meetings into month 8 of my pregnancy. And literally, I completed construction drawings the week before the baby was due. Kind of crazy. So as I was away on maternity leave, the building was getting built, and I was lucky enough to go back for the grand opening with my family. And I thought that was the greatest gift of all, just being able to go back and see my second baby in completion. Well, an amazing thing happened to me. This is the story that is energizing and that I'd like to share with you, is that I didn't think anything of it, but Steve Jobs actually came up to me and asked me to go to dinner with him and the Cube team. And at that time, there was only 1 seat at the table, and I couldn't bring my family. So he asked if I'd come, but I graciously declined, thinking that I couldn't go because I had my child and my husband with me. And I thought, I had given up the chance of a lifetime. Stupid. But then something surprising happened. He came up a second time and he said, okay, I got a spot for your husband, but there's no kids coming tonight. Can you get a babysitter? And again, I was struggling with, well, I could try to get somebody to take care of my baby, but I really don't want to. I want to be with her and I want to be with my family. So regretfully and graciously, I declined again. Stupid. Chance of a lifetime. What am I doing? Well, again, just kicking myself. At the end of the day, basically, the store was crowded, and then he comes through, parting of the Red Sea like Moses, to me and says this, all right, you drive a hard bargain. The kid can come, but if she poops, she pees, or she cries, she's out. And I'm thinking, my God, what do I do? Is that an invitation? And this is the photo somebody took at the time that he was asking. But the lesson learned here is that one of the greatest visionaries of the world, of our time, had the sight to see my value when I was blind to my own value. He saw it enough to ask me to the table 2 times, 3 times, until I said yes. And for me, that was something that was extraordinary, but it reminds me of the fact that we all need champions, that we can't do it alone. Sometimes we don't see our own value, and we need somebody to point it out to us and say, yes, you're worthy, and you deserve to be at the table. So after that experience, there was a bit of an interesting period where I was going back to work with the first kid, and I don't need to tell you that parenthood and trying to keep up a career is quite hard. It's a challenge. But luckily for me, the project I went to after the Apple retail stores was Mills College, Lori Iloki Graduate School of Business in Oakland. And what was amazing about that project was the fact that the client and the program was about a women's business school, a women's focused business school, because they were dealing with the statistics, which are even worse than architecture, of the lack of women in leadership positions in the Fortune 500 companies. And that was kind of a first aha moment, that there was something going on that I should be paying attention to, because I was going through all these struggles in my own personal and professional life. And the amazing thing was I got to work with women who are clients, women who are engineers, and also women who are contractors. We had a woman superintendent. And it was intentional on the part of Mills College to invest in women at that time. So it was a great experience. But at the end of it, just as I was getting back to normal, what I thought was normal, we ended up having our second child, and then the recession hit, 2009. Well, when I went back to work, they were laying people off from industry-wide, and there were no projects to be found. And I was working part-time, and I was worried. I didn't think that I'd be able to find project work, and I had struggles and doubts about whether or not it was worth it all. I didn't feel like I was being a good parent. I didn't feel like I was being a good architect. And at that time that I was contemplating leaving the profession, a lot of different things were happening. Denise Scott Brown was dealing with the Pritzker Prize petition controversy with the help of the petition that was written by Harvard Women in Design. They had a petition out to talk about the fact that she wasn't being recognized with her husband, Robert Venturi. Sheryl Sandberg was releasing Lean In and talking about the challenges, again, that women face in work, in life. And also, architect Barbie, of all things. What does architect Barbie have to do with women in architecture? Well, Kelly Hayes Micheloni and Despina Strategakos, they lobbied for Mattel to have the next career Barbie be architect Barbie, and they believed that if little girls saw that Barbie was an architect, that they could do it as well. Dream the bigger dream. So at that time, I was also asked to speak at a symposium, and I thought, what could I possibly have to do to say or to help anybody? But they said, no, come, offer your experiences, show other women that they could do it too. So I went and I spoke, and from that energy came this amazing rally cry that we needed to do something. Instead of just talking about it, we needed to take action. And at that time, I was reading an article by Alexandra Lang from Architecture's Lean In Moment. And what she said was really resonant. It said, we need to create a new set of best practices, a design project in and of itself based on data, shared experiences, and interpretation. So we created a survey, and at the time that I made that commitment to do that survey, I felt like I was eating a whale. And there's a Shel Silverstein poem about this little girl named Melinda May who promises that she's going to eat this giant whale. Well, everybody laughs at her, and they say, oh, you can't possibly do that. You're too small, and the whale's too big. Well, guess what she did? She was indignant, just like I was. She said, I'm going to eat that whale. I'm going to show you. And she did it, bite for bite, chewing at the tail. It took her 89 years to eat that whale. What I learned from Melinda May was that you need to have resolve and to take action and commit to doing something and follow through. But the difference was that it wasn't going to take me 89 years to do it, and I wasn't going to do it alone. So I asked my friends and the people I knew to come to the table with me to grab their fork, to get bigger forks, so that we could all tackle this equity problem together. So in our survey work, we asked a lot of questions about the architecture profession, and we launched it in early 2014. And basically, we didn't think we would have that many respondents because it was a grassroots survey, And we were just hoping that we would get 500, maybe 1,000 if we were lucky, respondents from across the country. Well, we got 2,289 people answering this survey. And it wasn't a short survey, it was 90 questions. It was pretty intense. We were asking the hard questions. We weren't asking if you felt discriminated against. We were asking just the facts. Did you go to architecture school? How long did it take to get licensed? Are you satisfied with your job? And how do you define success in your career today? And some of the answers we got were pretty interesting. So for an example, the key elements of success, one would think that people would pick money or promotion or recognition with awards as their identity of what success was. But they actually said that, no, we want to work with a talented, collaborative, and positive team. We want to work on projects of personal and professional significance. And we want work-life flexibility. We want the ability to control when we work and how we work so we could do the best job possible, because 9 to 5 just doesn't work. So from that energy, we had a symposium. We launched the survey information. Everybody was really excited. We had infographics, which conveyed the information in a bite-sized way. And then basically, 250 people from all over the US came to that event. And it wasn't just revealing the data and complaining about the bad things that were happening. We were challenging people. We called it equity by design, knowledge, discussion, action. And through the programming that we had throughout the day, we asked people not just to share their personal stories, but to think of ways that we could actually change the equation. And from that momentum, we ended up going to the AIA, the American Institute of Architects, National Convention in May in Atlanta, and sharing the energy, what we learned there. And we created this event called a Hackathon. A hackathon is a phenomenon from Silicon Valley where there's a concentrated effort to solve a problem, define the problem, brainstorm with a group of people, and then come up with a solution. And they had to pitch at the end a sort of business plan of how they were going to solve the equity challenges in architecture. And we had a winning team, and the exciting thing is they're actually going through with trying to launch an app called Build Your Tribe on solving some of the challenges of lack of mentorship in architecture. Really exciting. And then finally, we knew that we couldn't do it alone. Biting the whale, eating the whale had to be a collective effort. So we asked the national organization to have vested interest in getting things done. We lobbied and campaigned for a resolution to be passed so that we could make this a national issue, to hire a commission, to promote a commission that would study this, a group of experts, architects and non-architects, to come to the table and prescribe best practices of what's being done in different industries. And then around the world, we've been connecting with other equity organizations in architecture and trying to figure out what the best solutions are and sharing those solutions. We're calling it the Equity Alliance. So you could see here around the globe that there's a lot of good activity happening and good ideas worth sharing. And then finally, I challenge you, the audience, architects, non-architects, community builders, people in real estate, developers, anybody. We see a problem in architecture about equity, but it's a bigger problem because the people that don't represent you as architects don't represent you in your built communities. What could be done to make your communities better places? What's needed? What's missing? If we come to the table, not just to think differently about different ideas, but to make a difference by doing, by action, we can make a bigger difference. So I know you're probably all hungry and ready for lunch, and I ask all of you to come to the table, grab a fork, and have a piece of whale. Thank you very much.